Okay, go ahead, Mr. Receiver.
Thank you, Mr. Kapoor. Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, January 28th, 2025, and we are joined here today for the Municipal Financial Recovery Advisory Committee meeting, MFRAC for short. As always, we are joined by representatives of the Governor's Office, Delaware County Council, and the City of Chester. On behalf of the Governor's Office, we are joined by Deputy Director of Department of Community and Economic Development, Mr. Andrew Sheaf. On behalf of Delaware County Council, Ms. Kelly Diaz, and on behalf of the City of Chester, Mayor Roots. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I have not heard from Councilman Davis. We may need to talk about another appointment if this meeting time is a challenge for him. Today, we are also joined by Chief of Staff to this engagement, Mr. Vijay Kapoor, and we will, and Mr. Cody Deal as always, sorry, sir. And today we'll have a presentation from Mr. Buffalo. But before we get into that, I want to start out today's meeting with an address from Mayor Roots. Mayor Roots, would you like to take it from here?
Sure. Good afternoon. The City of Chester placed Police Commissioner Stephen Gretzky on administrative leave on yesterday, Monday, January 27th, pending an investigation into a traffic incident on the night of Sunday, January 26th. Pennsylvania State Police were called to the scene by the Chester Police Department in accordance with city policy, and they are investigating. The City of Chester has retained the outside law firm of Campbell Durant to conduct an internal investigation, and Major Katrina Blackwell will serve as acting commissioner while the investigation continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we get into today's presentation, are there any questions for the mayor? Any comments from? Thank you, Mayor, for addressing this personnel matter. I think it was important to get out a public statement. Today we will have a presentation from Mr. Shawalski Buffalo. Mr. Buffalo has been engaged through the receivership team to assist the city's Community and Economic Development Department as it takes on new initiatives and goes through a reorganization, among other things. Mr. Buffalo and others participated in a parcel condition survey, and likes of that survey, we would like to share with the results of that survey. We would like to share with you now. Mr. Buffalo.
Good afternoon, Mr. Receiver. Thank you for the time. Good afternoon, everyone on the call. VJ, I presume I have permissions to share screen. One moment, please. Can everyone see the visual feed okay on their screens?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So during our time in this engagement with the receiver team, as members of the receiver team, we've always tried to go and approach our work, not under the presumptions that we know what the problems and the solutions are up front, but really to go in and just start to evaluate and assess much of what the status of the community was at the time of actual receivership. And during that time, one of the things that we've always kind of anecdotally struggled with is that perceptually, due to the proliferation of vacant properties throughout the city, our observations was that, oh, there's a tremendous issue afoot in terms of blight and vacancy within the community of Chester. But towards that goal, we finally have arrived at least an assessment that sets a baseline of evaluation for points going forward that has been exhaustive and for the most part deliberative in trying to determine the full extent how many properties are actually vacant and blighted throughout the community and where they may be. So this presentation today is really just to sort of give an overview of how far we've come in terms of our overall assessment within the community. Serve as a reminder that a lot of the work that we've done is actually tied directly to the recovery plan for the community, but also give a sense of what this data means and how we intend to deploy it in the future. So with that said, as a preamble, our general overview, as I cited, we want to go over a reminder of where we are with this document with the recovery plan, an update on our economic development initiatives to date, talk about the property conditions assessment project in general, go over the resultant findings, and talk about the next action steps going forward. So again, as a reminder, we've always tried to stress and reiterate that much of the work that we've undertaken is tied back to and is driven by the recovery plan. Specifically as it relates to this assignment, goal number 4, to improve the overall perception of the city. Again, anecdotally, when first impression someone may enter the community overall from one of the many gateways into Chester, there's varying differences of opinion on the cleanliness, the perceived safety, and the green associated with the community. Secondarily, we've tried to take this opportunity to basically address one of our primary initiatives to increase the blight remediation within Chester. And again, with this data in hand, we now have a clearer picture in terms of where blighted properties exist and to what degree they actually are blighted. So to date, we've actually accomplished our primary goal of going in and identifying as many of the published documents on Chester to assess its overall economic potential. We reviewed all the economic planning documents that have existed, including the general comprehensive planning documents. And we've undertaken a review of several studies and reports for each source file and documented those and shared those back with our cohort at South Central Regional Planning for DCED, as well as other parties that have undertaken various aspects of this engagement. So to date, we've completed an economic development plan with Fourth Economy that's laid out a general strategy for economic development recovery in Chester. Secondarily, we had a very specific engagement with Recast Boost to develop a downtown revitalization plan for the Overtown neighborhood. And tertiarily, we've actually engaged the city's comprehensive planning firm to revision and recast the original comprehensive plan overall. At the time of our engagement, it was just expiring in 2020. And we had hoped that the work that would be undertaken there would cast and at least inform some of our work going forward with the recovery efforts in Chester. So we've arrived now at this burning question. To the extent of how much blight there is and to where it may be located. Towards that goal, we engaged the firm Cyclomedia, who drove well over 150 miles of roadway, cartway, alleys, and side streets within Chester of all 4.2 square miles, as illustrated here with the green lines on the map. In addition to the drive, they've actually gone through and used their LiDAR technology, satellite review of actual images that may have been blocked by trees. And we have a general picture, parcel by parcel overall, of what the blight is within Chester. So again, a little more detail about their process and what it all can be used for various aspects. While we specifically are focusing on blight remediation and property conditions assessments, the tools that they've deployed can be used for several other alternatives, public safety, appraisals, etc. But again, our focus at this point in time is primarily on blight and trying to address the issues of vacancy. So again, here's an illustration of the vehicle that was used that drove the streets. And here's a sample of how they capture it within incremental, I think it's 15-meter snapshots going parcel by parcel along those roadways. So each of these areas reflect a sector of general information related to the community. One of the deliverables that we have once they initially captured all the data, the real high value element that was part of the project, the assignment, was them going in and actually reviewing all of the data and then stratifying each of the parcels along a category from 0 to 5. 0 being more or less indicative of the fact that there was very little blight, 5 being one that was actually, there's a significant issue with either structure, an imminent public safety threat of sorts, or some kind of condition that would actually lead to the blighted condition of the property overall. So here's an illustration of one of those photos within the community. Again, blight varies based on opinions, and blight also varies based off of geographic location. One person's perception of blight may not necessarily be another person's perception of blight. I guess one of the ways you could colloquially say it is that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So in this particular instance, while this property might present an eyesore for someone that may be a code enforcement individual, it may present an opportunity for someone that's an investor that wants to come in and rehab or renovate a particular property. But be that as it may, you'll see here in the top left corner the severity of the scale of blight that we've actually pursued. Severity 1, slightly damaged structure, some trash. Severity 2, moderately damaged structure. Severity 3, significantly damaged structure, lots of trash. Severity 4, completely boarded and abandoned structure. And severity 5, either burnt structural damage or basically unfit for human habitation to some degree. And this one is probably one of the worst outliers that it represents overall. So here with this imagery, we now have a front-facing view of the property. We also have, as you can see in this lower quadrant here, an aerial view of the photo that actually illustrates the parcel and the adjoining property conditions next door. So to date, we've taken this data and we've actually have at least a full panoply of all the properties that exist in Chester, the issues that have been identified with each one, their latitude, longitude, the actual parcel, and how they've been identified by Cyclomedia as Category 5 and an actual hyperlink. And all of this information is readily available now to staff across multiple departments, be it Public Works, code enforcement, obviously, but additionally police and fire, who may also have a need for this information and this data as they deploy their efforts to do their jobs daily within the community. So the overall resultant findings were this. To our surprise, and I say this in a positive way, of the total 13,828 parcels that are within the community, within the city limits, it appears that as though less than 1% are actually severely blighted. And I say that in a way that it's positive because, again, but for the perception of the gateways when you come in, where there may be proliferations of trash periodically or other issues associated with quality of life or quality of place in Chester, initially, years ago, we thought this number would be significantly higher. But you can tell based off of this snapshot in time, and again, this is a snapshot in time, basically from May or June when the consultant actually did the drive, the vendor actually did the drive through the community, that at that point in time, there are 27 parcels that are identified as severely blighted. And this is a manageable number, dare I say it, based off of, I guess, the scale of the overall total number of parcels within the city. But again, this baseline is this snapshot in time helps us hopefully identify that overall, of all the properties that have been identified, that a significant amount of them are not as blighted as we originally perceived them to be. And hopefully we can use this data to inform at least an intervention, a strategy of sorts to address those properties that are imminent public safety threats, present a direct nuisance to the community, and hopefully abate them as quickly as possible. So I'll let this slide sit in for a moment. We've shared this internally with staff and have actually kind of debated it. And we want to, at some point, kind of ground truth it a little bit, because again, with all the technology that's there, I trust my eyes a little bit more than I trust data in some instances. So it's our hope that we can actually get code enforcement officers out under the directorship of the Director of Economic and Community Development to actually go and lay a 360-degree physical view on each of these individual buildings and offer some feedback in terms of priority of demolition. Of these 27, which one was the one that needs the most imminent support in terms of demolition versus others that may perceptually be, I don't want to say flippantly not that bad, but from other person's perspectives, may be actually rehabable and they're willing to make the investment to do it. So with that said, we'll continue the presentation. Again, another visual of what this data represents and how it can be utilized by staff. I know our code enforcement folks are always vigilant in terms of their efforts to go out and actually identify problematic properties within the city. But here is something that they can actually present in court and use substantially to maybe provide evidence to a district magistrate to say, hey, if the owner's not necessarily addressing this issue, we need to intervene and probably take the initiative on our own to address it as a problem. So one of the things that most of us data nerds get excited about are heat maps. And here you can see concentrations of where we've identified some of the severest properties, or for the most part located geographically within the community. And hopefully this will help inform staff as to ways to either deploy resources or devise interventions to kind of address vacancy and blight in the various parts of the city. Again, the whole intention was to have data drive the decisions and the results and the outcomes. And it's my hope that once we have this tool in conjunction with some other information, that'll really, really help us make a transformative strategy or a transformative game plan to make investment in the Chester community overall. So our next steps, as I alluded to, it's my hope that within the next couple of months that the Chief of Staff and the Director of Economic and Community Development will deploy the code enforcement teams to kind of go out and reevaluate all of the data that's been identified in in terms of just cohorts of groups of properties. So hopefully all the fives can be reviewed and evaluated in short order, and actually make a determination of those 27 properties, which one is the worst offender all the way down to the least offensive, and make a determination as to how quickly those need to be either addressed, either cleaned and sealed, boarded up, or actually demolished. Secondarily, from a staffing standpoint, we would like to use this opportunity to stand up an intra-departmental blighted property review committee. And really that means that we get the folks that are part of fire, part of police, part of public works and code enforcement and the planning department to all kind of sit around the campfire and look at this data and figure out the ways to best deploy the city's scant resources to effectively leverage the resources that they have to get the most bang for the buck. But then tertiarily, we'd like to go back within 3 years' time and do another drive of the city and see where benchmark or what strides have been made in terms of improvements. Of these properties that have been identified, how many have been abated? How many have been demolished? How many have been renovated and rehabbed? But one of the things that we've conspicuously not really referenced as part of this presentation are the vacant parcels themselves. We don't necessarily stratify, clean dirt, but those parcels present development opportunities for Chester to really, really reinvent itself and drive further investment into the community. But hopefully with this information and other pieces of information soon to come, that'll help figure out an overall strategy to really, really make some investment happen. So the next step that we have in terms of our assignment within the community, we've embarked upon an effort with the Reinvestment Fund out of Philadelphia to work with their group and really get more data in place to do a market value analysis of the community. And that's really to identify where there's been investments made within the marketplace, where there's a high rent district in the community, where we may have more affordable or market rate or middle market options of housing stock or development throughout the community, and taking all of this information, all of this data, and again, using this to help Mayor Roots and his team really from budget season to budget season, figure out the best way to get the most bang for their buck and take whatever municipal dollars that they can get and leverage them with other partnerships and other opportunities from other players, whether it's DVRPC, regionally, DCEDs through the state, or any federal dollars that they could potentially pull in, being that the community is an entitlement community and gets its own allocation of CDBG and home dollars. But really and truly, we believe that we've taken a positive step in the right direction. We now have a measurable number that we can target and attack and approach. And at this point in time, we're just trying to figure out from different points of view, what's the best methodology to go in and kind of address these issues. So with that said, Mr. Receiver, thank you for the opportunity and the support, honestly, from DCED to really help fund a lot of these efforts to get us underway. I believe that this particular investment was funded by the city through ARPA dollars, but still all the other previous works that were taking place, from the comp plan update to the fourth economy work, and even the work that was performed by Recast Boost has really been driven by DCD support of the community overall. So again, thank you for this opportunity to present. And certainly I'm available to answer any questions if any wants a little more detail about the kind of things that I've sort of glossed over today. But I get excited about the data. I get excited about the numbers. I'm a dirt nerd, so I'll admit it. And I'm looking forward to what this means in terms of possibilities of transformation in the Chester community. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Buffalo. At this time, and thank you for today's presentation. At this time, opening it up to the committee for any questions of Mr. Buffalo or the team.
Well, this isn't the first time I've seen it. It's fascinating every time I see it. We've got our log-ons just recently, and I've just started playing with it. It's an amazing tool. It's going to do everything that you described it will do. What always intrigued me though was the categories of blight, especially 3 and 4, where the bulk of them are.
Yes.
And number 4 always, even when I first saw it, and I guess I can bring it up now since I feel like talking. Completely boarded up / abandoned structure. I mean, I know for a fact there are some completely boarded up homes in this town that aren't abandoned. They are occupied by people who are in, and I know there's no way that tool has got anything to penetrate the walls to see what's inside.
Right.
In category 3, which says significantly damaged structure, I don't know. I would imagine they should be flip-flop, but the numbers are so close that maybe they just should just be combined as just 4 groups. So that's my only
Well,
remarks to this.
we do have the ability to combine the data if the group collectively wants to present it that way. But Mayor, I'm glad you kind of hinted to those 2 points, because what that fundamentally shows is that you need that human element to be able to go in and actually identify which of these properties are occupied, and basically from a policy standpoint, make the determination. Demolition clearly isn't an option when it's someone's privately owned property that they continue to habitate. But certainly maybe there's other opportunities for different interventions. Maybe there's opportunities through a critical repair program to help them get the property up to code, or get the fundamental systems that they need to make it a little more attractive. But again, certainly your comments are noteworthy. And honestly, this tool is intended to prompt that type of discussion with you, key members of your cabinet and members of the departments, to kind of figure out, what do we want to do with this information and how can we leverage it to the best possible way? So duly noted. And certainly 3 and 4, it's relatively close. It's definitely close. So it's certainly noteworthy to figure out maybe there's a way to kind of combine them potentially.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other comments of the committee? Andrew?
Yeah, if I could, just want to commend the team on this really significant effort to finish this project and get this information. I mean, this is really good information that you guys have assembled here. It's going to enable you to have the conversations that you want to have and make the smart, strategic decisions, and also, I think, leverage some more investment to really help transform the city. Just a great step, and commend you for it, and look forward to digging more into it. Yeah.
I just have one question, and that maybe you mentioned this already, but the structures that were analyzed, were these just residential areas, or did it also include buildings in commercial and industrial?
They drove every parcel, every building. The one thing that we did not ask them to do was parse out based off of land use, which buildings were for which particular purpose. We do still reserve that data, and we certainly will look at that in the future with the next step, with this market value analysis with the reinvestment fund. But this particular data is intended to be, pardon the reference, chunks of information as opposed to the granularity of it. We didn't want to miss the forest for the trees, so to speak. But again, certainly the information that we have, we didn't define out the land use codes, but it's literally every building, every street, and every structure within the community. So it includes institutional buildings, it includes single family homes, multifamily properties, etc.
Thank you. And I echo the comments that, I mean, it's fascinating to learn about how this was done. And I'm really excited to hear more about what becomes of this. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. So Mr. Kapoor, in respect for your time, I don't want to dominate the discussion. I yield the rest of the time back to you, certainly to continue the conversation.
I think Mr. Ward, were you about to share something? No.
I was not.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, Mr. Buffalo, for presenting this to our viewing public. We are certainly accessible if there's any follow-up, any one-on-one discussions or small groups that you would like to engage in, which reminds me to go back to the point of giving Mr. Deal the opportunity to address any public comment received since our last meeting, and or to provide our contact information.
Sure, thank you. So there wasn't any public comments received since the last meeting, so would just like to continue to encourage the public to reach out to us. The best way to do so is through our resource account email address. It's info@chesterreceivership.com. Again, that's info@chesterreceivership.com.
Mr. Dill, well, I'd be remiss if I didn't share at least one comment to encourage folks to continue to visit the city's website to keep up on the job openings, as Mr. Buffalo is doing very important work for the Department of Community and Economic Development. We are actively recruiting for a department head, for a director of the department, to really further these efforts and take the leadership reins within city government. The job posting description is available on the city's website, and we welcome any and all applications. Are there any questions of me or my office? Well, again, thank you to the committee for joining us here today. Our next scheduled meeting is February 11th at 1 p.m. Thank you. Have a good day.